Social emotional learning is what started my journey. I was just a mom. At the time, I was advocating for more lunch recess. I wanted a little bit more playtime at the school. And I learned that the school district had started a new program that was actually taking away the last 10 minutes of lunch recess for very, very busy elementary school students. I learned that the principal was leading them into daily mindfulness meditation using a Tibetan singing bowl. You send your child with your value system, your own beliefs, and now they're getting the government's value system installed into them. I want to encourage you parents, be vigilant. Social emotional learning must go.
Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to M4L Academy. My name is Missy Karwowski, director of M4LA, and I'm so glad that you've joined us as we continue to explore social emotional learning. M4L Academy is the school for parents, grandparents, and friends committed to fighting to preserve liberty in America, and that includes parental rights. We educate you on the issues and equip you with tools and resources so that you can effectively engage in your community. In today's video, like I said, we're going to continue on the topic of social emotional learning. Kelly Schenkoske will be diving into what SEL really looks like in schools, as well as providing some tips on how you can fight back. So cozy up as we kick off the presentation, because this is what your kids are actually learning in schools. Welcome back to class.
Thank you so much. I'm just so thankful for my dear friend Tiffany. What an immense, wonderful work she has done and is just a dear friend. I'm thankful for all of you tuning in to this important presentation. Social emotional learning is what started my journey as a mom, as an activist, as an independent researcher more than 8 years ago. I was just a mom. I was not going to school board meetings. I was taking my children to school. And at the time, I was advocating for more lunch recess. I wanted a little bit more playtime at the school. And back at that time, I learned that the school district had started a new program that was actually taking away the last 10 minutes of lunch recess for very, very busy elementary school students. And at that time, I learned that instead, those 10 minutes, the students were additionally seated outside usually, and the principal was leading them into daily mindfulness meditation using a Tibetan singing bowl. And so it was through that I ended up learning of this. You know, parents these days, it's really important that we make ourselves aware of what's happening in the classroom because the schools are not telling us. There's just this generalized theme that I've witnessed and experienced personally of don't tell mom or dad. And so I'm thankful for Moms for Liberty University being launched because we're telling mom and dad. So that time I met with the principal, and he shared with me, Kelly, kids are facing more difficulties today than ever before. And we have a new program, and it's rooted in neuroscience. And we're here to educate the whole child. It's a new program called Social and Emotional Learning. And so what we're going to do is we're going to not just focus on education, but on all the other things that impact a child's school day. And we're going to promote kindness. And he, in my opinion, and what I received was he marketed the program to me as the mom. I knew at that time nothing about social emotional learning. I did not know what the whole child model was, but I knew one thing. I'm the mom. My husband is the dad. And I was determined to figure out exactly what was going on. So that began nights and nights of research. And so today I'm encouraging everybody tuning in, these packets that have been provided for you, the resources, soak them up. The information is immensely helpful. Alex Newman's speech just now was incredible, but this is in your schools, and this is advancing even beyond the school walls and into the workplace for adults. So I want to share with you a little bit about how it makes its way into various school districts, because when it began in my children's school, it was one facet of the school day. But then shortly after, I learned it was going beyond just the school day. I learned that the communications app that the teachers told me was just to tell me when special events were happening at school was in actuality also being used for social emotional learning. There was this app called Class Dojo, and I was given notifications when special events were happening at school, but then I found out from my little first grader that they were watching various videos about social emotional learning in their classroom. I learned that they were having brain breaks at rainy day lunch recess in the classroom where social emotional learning topics were being infused into the school day. I also learned back then that the school district had brought in what was called the tapping solution, where students are taught to tap on what is perceived as energy meridians on the face and state comments about themselves. And then the school district was at the time considering a program called Mind Up curriculum that I was told, again, is rooted in neuroscience. Whenever somebody makes those claims, it's important, especially today, to understand what is the definition of the language that they're using, and in regards to what their claims are these studies accurate? Are these studies valid? Would they pass as an actual study that is holding any weight or true evidence? Because one of the big things I came across in my research was a lot of statements that these are evidence-based. But who does the research? Are they the proponents themselves? Because that immediately discounts the evidence that is what they're being used to bolster their entire agenda. So in my research, I ended up, through that experience, in that time, especially after meeting with the principal, I felt as though in that moment, I also received some parenting advice through social emotional learning that he was talking about. And I thought, this staff person may not even realize it, but I get the impression they're asserting their role in my child's life over me, the parent. And parents, you have the right to direct the upbringing of your children. And so from that moment, I knew that I needed to research as much as I could, learn as much as I could, so that I could really, truly assert myself. I am the mom, and they are my children. So in the schools today, social emotional learning, there's a couple things I wanted to share with you. CASEL, as Alex mentioned, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, they have a portion on their website, on their school guide, that talks about equity and social emotional learning. Equity is really being applied through a neo-Marxist lens for equal outcomes. It is actually doing a lot of damage in schools for something that purports itself to be advancing education. But here's one of the quotes on equity and social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is a way to uplift student voice and promote agency and civic engagement. So these are marketed phrases that are often put through perhaps even groups that are public records, are public relations experts, and people who understand communication, because they are selling SEL to a widespread audience, and they need that optimal buy-in from the public in order to continue this program. So keep that in mind when you're reading this. Promote agency. What does that look like? Student voice. What is that about? Civic engagement. The way these are manifested in the school day, all of those phrases are really in turn to promote student activism, and not just within the classroom, but outside the classroom and within the communities. So they say, continuing forward in this school guide from CASEL, when SEL, social emotional learning, goes beyond behavior management and positions young people as experts in understanding and fashioning a world that is more just and equitable. So again, just as Alex shared, this is about transforming a country from within using its children. And what are they doing? Children keep this in mind when you're faced with things happening in education. Children do not possess the typical capacity to process everything happening. And so they naturally, this is one thing I tell a lot of parents, children look up to teachers. They look up to doctors. They look up to a lot of adults in the community because they are adults. And it is important to understand that there are adults who are misusing that authority in our children's lives. And so, as Alex shared, one way to change a nation, one way to do this that they're working is to change and subvert the child's value system. I remember I filed a public records request on a school district in California on social emotional learning in an elementary school district. And the contents that I received included promoting activism and social justice. It also included what was very telling to myself was shifting from I to we, which is a very big theme I'm seeing out in California. Tiffany shared, we're not Vegas. What happens in California doesn't stay in California. And right now, California is faced with some fires, but in the same way, there is activism and educational fires, and the wind is blowing east. The wind is blowing across the globe. And so it is important to be appraised and aware of what is happening in my state because it's not staying in my state. And the goal with social emotional learning is also systemic. So they want to change the entire system. There's an article from Castle that talks about systemic SEL, and it states, a systemic approach ensures that SEL is woven into all students' educational experiences, more than a single lesson or activity. SEL is integrated across key settings where students live and learn. Pay attention to that, live. Classrooms, schools, homes, and communities. So the goal of social emotional learning, again, when it started in my children's school, it was one facet of the day, but then it became another facet of the day. We found it in education technology. It was infused into computer lab. It was found in the English classes, in the school library. It was found during special kindness weeks, which again, to the public, it appears very nice. They need that optimal buy-in. But what you end up with is this model that progresses towards this transformative change model goal that they seek to change the nation and the community and the children from within. And so it's something we must take seriously. I remember in my early days, I was going to talk with different people about this program, and they said, no, it's really good because my child can center themselves and it's really just about kindness. No. We must always be aware of not what is just put in front of us, but look 10, 20 steps ahead and understand where this is progressing us towards and understand, as Alex shared, where it came from. The United Nations is playing a very big role in advancing this. There's actually a TED speech on YouTube that you could look up. It's called How Social and Emotional Learning Can Bring a Better World. And that speaker goes on to talk about the global social emotional learning that they've planned, and they talk about a U.S. Department of Education study that followed and tracked the social and emotional analyses of students within our country. And again, they touted how this was evidence-based, of course. But what is really important to understand, too, in this speech this man gave was that he talked about the key time in a child's life when their value system is being developed and how that is the time to change children, to change citizens. So imagine you're sending your children to school for a quality education, to advance in mathematics, to love reading, to learn how to write, and to enjoy those formative years learning and growing and being ready for what their life will hold. But what's happened to our school system, it is being used to turn children into activists and to change them into a collective global culture. It was interesting. Alex shared about this global citizenship. Global citizenship education is being widely introduced in California, and it derives from a critical theory called critical global citizenship theory. And these are all agendas. Again, they have a history, they have a present, and they are working towards a progressive model. Another thing that I wanted to share about, too, in August of 2020, there was a Pennsylvania State College of Health and Human Development issue brief, which discussed how SEL was going to be used to promote equity. And it stated that with this agenda comes the opportunity to dismantle, rebuild, and restore our collective humanity and commitments to each other. Very similar to the public records request I mentioned earlier of shifting society away from I to we. This individualism departs and collectivism is what it's replaced with. Another thing that people may not be aware of, because again, it sounds so good. Our schools are installing see something, say something. And they're doing widespread reporting systems and mechanisms where students are encouraged to report other students who may be in violation of justice, diversity, equity, inclusion. They're using this in my area called JEDI, but it used to be called DIE, and then they switched it to DEI, and now they've turned it into JEDI. What will be next? But for your important effort in understanding this and looking into this, social emotional learning is far more than just kindness. That is your marketing pitch bait. It is a bait and switch. And in the school districts, it is additionally woven in now as in the district I did the public records request on, as not just a portion of the school day, not just found in an entire class, but as a pedagogy, the art of teaching. So teachers are being trained to use social emotional learning as the lens by which all classroom instruction occurs. I'm starting soon to wrap up my presentation, but let me share a couple other ways that SEL makes its way into the classroom. Also, data collection. It would be unfortunate if I didn't touch on this portion. Students are already being analyzed on a regular basis on their social and emotional and behavioral score, which is something that the teachers and the staff can reflect upon. And then that goes into a data system, sometimes on education technology platforms that the schools keep and use as a data tracking. So in the past, when I was growing up, we would be understanding that teachers kept record of incidents at school or food allergies and health issues and grading and assignments. But today, with the whole child, the whole portion of whole child is to depart from a sole focus on education and embrace every aspect, the nutritional, the home life, the mental health, the emotional and social side. There is a biopsychosocial model that's being used in schools in California, and we're seeing health clinics pop up on school districts. So there are many different ways that this infuses itself into the school day. Data collection from teachers, data collection from programs, and then in addition to that, the way in which social emotional learning turns into transformative social emotional learning, where it turns into action and activism for belonging, civic engagement, student agency. These are all the words that they like to use. But I encourage you, parents listening, parents like I was, go to your school district website, look under the board packets, look for the contracts. In the area I live in, a school district recently went into contract with an organization called Playworks. And Playworks actually works to come and they might send staff who then analyze the students at recess and at playtime. And they sometimes even work their way into making adjustments for recess. And in addition, we're seeing it enter into the sports teams. So different companies can be contracted and introduce social emotional emotional learning. And all the students are being encouraged into this model of conformity to then align to the CASEL competencies, align to the transformative CASEL competencies, and thereby it is this peer pressure system as well. You send your child with your value system, your own beliefs, and now they're getting the government's value system installed into them over 30 plus hours a week when they're present. So today, I want to encourage you parents, be vigilant, be informed, make others aware, look into your school board packets and those contracts, and do what you can. Social emotional learning must go. Thank you.
I am so thankful for the incredible work that Kelly is doing. She is truly a warrior in this fight for our kids' future. You can learn more about her and her work at atimetostand.me. So, did you recognize any of the terms she mentioned? Have you heard something similar at your child's school? If you want to learn more, head over to M4Lacademy.org and check out the SEL toolkit in our resource library. There's a link to it down in the description as well. Then you can check out the other topics we've covered, including CSE, gender ideology, social media, and more. And if this has lit your fire and you're ready to get engaged, well, we are here for it. Head over to momsforliberty.org to find your chapter, or maybe consider starting one in your community. Best part of it is that you're joining an amazing community and you are not in this fight alone. In the words of our founding father, James Madison, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only true guardian of liberty. And that is the mission of M4L Academy. Thanks for joining us today. Class dismissed.